Roll call.
Paul Burning,
Paul is excused.
Bob Fiedler,
Present.
Dan Hansen,
Here.
Kathy Leaf, present. Shelley Tomchek,
Can we have a motion to approve the minutes on the agenda?
I
So
move
moved.
to approve, yeah, second
Second.
that.
Kathy moves, Dan seconds, they're approved without objection. And so we'll go on to public comment. Any public comment? Public comment? There's nobody in the room for public comments. We'll move on to the business items. And before our county administrator gives the financial report, I just thought I would take care of one thing that came up as a result of our board meeting 2 days ago when we adopted a bylaws change that permits Zoom meetings into the near future. One of the issues apparently was how standing committees would handle Zoom meetings. I'm going to leave it up to us to decide that, but my preference would be that if anybody wants to attend by Zoom, that they be able to attend by Zoom. If they want to attend in person, they can attend in person. Is that satisfactory to everybody? And if it is, then that's the way we'll conduct business. So what has to happen then is, I'll just tell Janet we'll be prepared to do Zoom meetings, and if people could just let me know if they need to attend by Zoom. Does that make sense, Mr. Minister? Okay. So,
Are we going to have, could we have a discussion about that? It's not on the agenda, but I'd like to say something.
oh, sure, go ahead.
It's an organizational issue. I think we can discuss.
So we said that we need to give plenty of warning, but if somebody's not feeling well and they want to attend the meeting, I don't know if I've got a scratchy throat the night before, it's not going to give me time to let you know. Are we saying that we'd like to have the Zoom meeting set up, just send the link? Do we have to pay if nobody uses it and we send the link?
There's no cost.
So should we just have the contingency of sending the link for the meetings and be prepared?
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's what we'll do in the future if we have, for our next meeting. Okay, at this point, we'll turn to our business items, and our first item is the county administrator with a financial report.
The financial report is in the packet. The financial report in the packet. There's no glaring issues on our financial report. Everything is looking very good. Turn it down so we can see it. So we're most of the way through the year. I've actually looked ahead to the end of the year numbers, and we're looking good there. The revenues are coming in as we would expect at this time of the year, and all the expenses are really well off. You look at total expenses, and you look at this percentage remaining. So we have 1/12, and we usually run into some expenses into January that we book back into December. So usually more than 1/12 should be available at the end of the year. But you're going to see that most, if not all, of the departments have more than that that's still available within their departments. So that's one quick, easy way that you can take and look at the financial statements. If you have any questions specifically on it, though, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
I had one question dealing with Justice Support Services, and I know we'll be hearing from Ms. Caprelli later in the meeting, but there's been a lot of changes over the course of the year in how we handle Justice Support Services, and a lot of additions in personnel to some aspects of things and deletions from others. Could you just comment on how we're doing in Justice Support Services and how that looks for the coming year in terms of the financials?
Yeah, if you're looking at the 2021 financial system, cross it off with a big red pen. I mean, it's really irrelevant. At the time that we set the 21 budget, Mike O'Keefe was here, and there was a day report center. So a lot has changed over 2021. So we are not within the budget for Justice Services, which was CJCC at the time that we set it. And I've told Susan just to ignore those numbers for 2021. For 2022, we've given our best guess, and we're going to try to stay around those parameters. But I think that's going to be our transitionary year where we can really see what the costs are, what came out of the Sheriff's Department is landing in Justice Support Services, settle in on the number of staff that she does have authorized in the budget and through some of the ARPA funding. So I think it's still sorting out in 2022 is basically how Justice Services is looking.
Supervisor Hanson.
Just jumping into that, are you separating out the ARPA money from those tasks which you're funding with ARPA so that you can look down the road and know what you're going to be able to do? And have you, what I've requested several times, a metric for how you're going to measure, because I really would like to know what the policies are. And we were hoping to participate in setting those policies and have been left out of that conversation. I'm starting to really wonder where we're going with that.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I think you have three questions there. So one is, are we separating the ARPA dollars out? Yes. So those are expensed with an ARPA code so that we can pull those out and look at them separately from the rest of the budget. They have a matching revenue item that comes in also, so you can see it that way. The second part of your question was?
Probably best left for the agenda item, but I have been wondering when we're going to have an actual report on how we measure success in that department and
So
how
metrics.
we can look at the financial from that perspective.
Right. So we are looking at metrics, and Susan and I have been talking about some issues that she'll probably be bringing forward to this committee in the near future, as her department is now finally getting fully staffed and she can start determining the work and scope and how her department's going to be functioning within the county. So there will be some of those policy decisions, and yes, there will be the metrics. We've heard you on that issue, and we're working towards that.
And if I could just add to what Supervisor Hanson was asking about, at the CJCC Criminal Subcommittee, chaired by Judge Waterman, there's been a lot of discussion with the Director of Justice Support Services in that committee as to what should be captured and how it should be captured, and there's been just fulsome discussion of that for the last couple of months, and I think they're bringing that to a head probably in February in some ways, so I think that you'll get some good answers. Dan? Thank you. Next item is our medical, any other questions? Our next item is our medical examiner's report. Patty Shackner.
Good morning, everyone. Just to give you a final wrap-up of 2021, we processed 851 cases in 2021. One of the big things that we noticed was our suicide numbers did go up. However, what was interesting in that was that the average age increased by 10 years in 1 year. So it went from 38 years old was the average age to 47 years old. So that was interesting. So we've been talking a lot about forensic psychological autopsies. And we can do a physical autopsy or run them through the scanner in the future, but it doesn't tell us anything that we already know. A psychological autopsy is done by a psychologist who comes in, and first, when we're at the scene, when we talk to the families, we'll be able to, at least pique the conversation of, would you like to have this? And then 3 months later, there's a lot of communication that goes on, and if the family says, yes, that is what we want, then we can do, the psychologist then goes and takes a deep dive into everything from medical records to behaviors and everything, and really comes up with a kind of a rubrics of why this happened, why it happened in the manner that it happened, and prevention strategies. When I was talking to Bob about it, one of the things we talked about was we're always chasing the tail. We're always chasing the tail. Our numbers are going up, but we never get that deep dive into the why. What services did they have? And what was all engaging here? And with our suicides, 1/3 of our suicides were public servants, either veterans or worked in public service. So there's definitely a trend there that we need to look at as we move forward. This isn't going to cost any more. This here doesn't cost it. We will have a cost, but it'll cost the same thing as if we would have taken to an autopsy. So in our budget, it will not change. But it should give Health and Human Services at least a rubrics of where to start looking for prevention. In this last year, when it comes to suicide, in 2020, we had 3 or 4 teenage suicides, and last year we had 1. But like I said, the average age went up. So, but we also know that the suicide attempts with children has increased significantly. So all the data is telling us that the suicide numbers are going to increase. So we, need to get ahead of it, especially when we're looking at our struggles with keeping our employees. And these are, this is traumatic for EMS, fire, law enforcement, the medical examiner's office, the communities, and we have to really take a deep dive into suicide prevention from the psychological side so that we can give Health and Human Services the tools that they need to come up with some good strategies in prevention. The next thing, we had an opportunity.
Could I jump in there for just
Yep.
1 second? We've talked about suicides about every other meeting we've had, and we had a very good meeting together a couple months ago where we talked about this and the need to emphasize this in the county. And you had many good ideas as to how we could do that. So I was just going to just solicit the views of the committee and see if working with Patty and with Health and Human Services and with the county administrator and others that have an interest in it, if we wouldn't want to try to do something beyond the scope of this committee, but a very public educational program, I'll say, not just one event, but maybe featuring one event and doing it sometime with a due ability to plan for it, maybe late spring or early summer. But I would just solicit Patty's perspective on whether she thinks that's a good idea, and then the committee's whether we've kind of been behind a couple of things like a big drug effort where we had the judges and the sheriff came in and gave an excellent program on that. We did something on elder care from this committee. This one, of course, we have an interest in it because of Patty, and HHS does, so we could combine with HHS or the Human Services Board if they wanted to do something. But do you think it's a good idea or not?
So before the pandemic hit, the medical examiner's office and all law enforcement, the sheriff's office, the judges, everybody involved, we had a really robust program that connected mental health and addiction. It was the bedroom one, in plain sight. And we had a actual presentation. We set up a bedroom in schools. We had a free dinner for families. We had childcare set up so parents could come and get educated about addiction and the paraphernalia. And we had Hazelton came out and talked. I mean, we had a really robust community outreach program, and it took a lot of work. But we saw that it worked. But we haven't been able to do that for 2 years, and it's probably will be 2.5 to 3 years, which means we have almost, with teenagers, kids that will have a full high school career that them and their parents have never been engaged in these conversations. That lack of education for teenagers is going to be what is going to be our problem moving forward. So we have to figure out, we got to bring out our old stuff and get it up to date, and then we have to go back and engage with school districts and communities one-on-one and do these types of programmings. A one and done is not going to do it. Well, I mean, Sheriff Knutson, you had a whole group of officers that did this. I mean, it was a big program, and it took a lot of time and energy, but we had staff that was able to do it. So,
And funding. I mean, we had
Yes.
some grant funding. We bought a trailer and all the items. So there's also the financial investment that has been put into this as well.
yep. And I mean, I would say we were out there almost from a spring, and we kind of targeted in the spring, but we were out there we were at every single school district at least once a year. And, you got to meet them where they're at. You know, we can't always do what's convenient. You have to meet them where they're at, and you had to do it during dinner time. And the home ec classes made the food, and I mean, there was a lot of stuff that went into it, but it worked, and we've seen our numbers change. But now, you know, because we haven't engaged in that, and we know that addiction is up, and we know that addiction of parents is up, and we know that, you know, all this is happening, we're going to have to figure out how to do that again. But it's going to cost money, it's going to cost time, and it's going to be a big thing.
Well, maybe I can just jump in and say, any of the other committee members, please jump in too. But assuming that we have concurrence that we should do something, maybe I can just suggest that for our next meeting, we have some serious follow-on discussions with the key players, with the administrator on terms of any money that would be expended and how we could do this and execute it. That doesn't mean we're voting on anything now. I'm just saying this is maybe how we can proceed. And if anybody has a great interest in this, please feel free to express that. We can all get together at following the law, we can get together in some way to discuss this and then come back in February maybe with a firm recommendation on how to proceed. Anybody else have any comment on that? Shirley?
So the opioid settlement, that's dollars. I don't know the timing of it, but it would certainly be appropriate to use funds from that to help us with this effort, I would think. Can you know anything more about timing or the amount of money?
Yeah, we know the amount of money. It's several $1 million, but it's spread over 10 years, so we're talking about a few $100,000 a year. And next Tuesday, we have a meeting to talk about when we'll actually start receiving that money. But I would anticipate in 2022, we'll receive something.
So then, do we know how much it costs? I mean, this is a few years ago, so costs have gone up, obviously. But do you have some of the infrastructure left? Like you had a trailer, is any of that left? Or I'm just trying to figure out how much money we'd need.
Yeah, and I don't know what ongoing items or up-to-date items and pamphlets. It's really staffing and the overtime for officers to get involved and any of the staffing.
Yeah, and it's reconnecting with all the school districts and reconnecting and making those connections and, you know, getting buy-in. And working with the liaison officers. I mean, there was a lot of layers to it, but it was very successful and it worked. And we have the bones to bring these things back, but we just got to figure out how to do it post-pandemic and how to get because I would imagine most of the people that were involved are in different layers of law enforcement now and just figuring that out. We all had our own programming, and then it all came together and we did what we did. And it was just a huge collaboration. But it takes time, effort, energy, and money. And, you know, and I would imagine just the drug paraphernalia alone, that was a big investment. And there was so many things that we had that I'm sure there's bigger and better now. There was that you know, on how to hide drugs. I mean, every day was a lesson for me. It's like, I didn't know that. So that's just, you know, they know where the access is, but it was really informative for parents. And that was the beauty of that program. And I think, you know, as we move forward, utilizing our intern program really to help us with, you know, the addiction, which brings me to the next thing we did. I did put in an application for the community health internship program, and it looks like we'll have at least one, but Bayfield County and Ashland County usually are the counties that take on this internship program. It's an 8-week university program that the intern is paid during that 8 weeks, and they're 40 hours a week, and they literally are there to come up with programs and do this here type of work. HSS is looking at having an intern, but I think if you guys are looking at interns for a paid intern this summer, that, contacting Nisi and telling, giving her an idea what your program would look like would be a way to get kind of a robust program going on with interns to, dig into that data and create something that can be marketed. And it includes everything from initiating to collecting data to doing a full marketing program. So I think there is opportunity that we can work through the Community Health Initiative and coordinate with our different departments and have some really young people come up with a good program that we can work on. And our program coordinator, we're hoping to do an offer today, so we should be good to go and be ready to handle 2022.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, observations from anybody? Okay. Thank you again, Patty. We'll go to the next item, Justice Support Services. Susan Caparelli.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor. I just have to say, I've worked with Patty out in the community as a citizen, and very passionate, and we have worked together in the past, and I certainly am all for working more with juvenile issues. And actually, Judge Needham just sent me an email last evening just pertaining to let's start thinking about how we're addressing juvenile issues across this county. So kind of fortuitous conversation. As Ken commented on, my department's been ever forming and staffing and that sort of thing. December has been kind of a wash. We were faced with COVID, and I was down to one staff person for a good part of December. So most of what I'm presenting today was put together last evening. So, and it's more of a statement than an actual report. I do have some stats for you, but first, I'd just like to let everybody know that we have a CJCC full council meeting next Thursday, the 13th of January at 8 a.m. I would love it if everybody attended. Just to comment as well, we are working in our criminal justice subcommittee, chaired by Judge Waterman, on the very things that we've been talking and informing in our pretrial services. So that is the place where those things are being developed, policies, discussions, and how we operate as a whole county system. And we hope to continue to move those things forward and bring it here. The second thing I wanted to update folks on, because my department is kind of a conglomeration of several things that were separate in the past, and that is the treatment court program. Kim Kitzberger did leave the treatment court program, and I just hired 2 people. The treatment court coordinator will start, the new treatment court coordinator will start the 24th. She has several years in treatment court coordination in Minnesota and also court operations staffing. The second person is funded by our TAD grant, which we were successful in receiving this year, or actually the next 5 years. I think it was $146,517 per year with a 25% match from the county. That person is Ashley Barthol. She's actually a substance abuse counselor in training and has several years working in our behavioral health department. So she will be moving over and supporting our treatment court as well as some other justice support functions. So when I think about my department as a whole, anybody that comes into the department, and most everybody is new, they're cross-trained. Because we don't want to see only one person in the county knowing how to assess people on a compass assessment and those sorts of things. We want to be able to fill gaps as are required. We've faced that just in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So those are some of the things that I'm committed to. I'll move on to basically what I kind of, I missed our last meeting, and I apologize for that, but I've just kind of celebrated 6 months here, and we're also moving into 2022. I've put together a little statement last night, and if you'll bear with me, I'd like to read that to you. Justice system stakeholders across the state of Wisconsin, and certainly across this nation, have recognized how important bail decision-making is on many levels. Informed, risk-based decisions ensure that the right defendants are detained, and only the right defendants are subsequently released, resulting in increased public safety and the fairer, more equitable administration of justice. Conversely, uninformed decisions contribute to poor use of our jail resources, release and detention decisions void of evidence-based practice, and potential community safety concerns. Inequities in sentencing, loss of community resources for those involved in the system that may be diverted, and the increased likelihood of future recidivism. As everyone is aware, the previous St. Croix County Day Report Center, the DRC, closed its doors the second week in July of 2021, and I believe it created a pathway to opening new doors of the now Justice Support Center and the potential changes that have followed. Since that time, essential elements of a high-functioning pretrial services program have been slowly taking shape and implemented toward a now established St. Croix County pretrial services program. It hasn't been without its bumps, and there are certainly more necessary changes to come. Our county has the foundation, the framework initiated years earlier by Judge Needham and Mike O'Keefe within the CJCC to improve our front-end decision practices and support all stakeholders in the process, to provide a central theme for decision-making as a component of a well-functioning justice system. Together, as a collaborative community justice system, these elements will help us realize a more effective and equitable pretrial justice system. As we start the year, I'm reflective on the word collaborative, as it relates to all those across our governance system who have assisted in this ever-evolving process of change here over the last 6 months, if you will. Not only the justice support staff who have just been formed, but others from jail staff altering their booking questions to allow our risk assessing to occur, to our diligent dispatch center who consistently provides us our needed criminal history reports at the crack of dawn every morning, sometimes hundreds of pages thick. Being patient as we muck through monitoring contracts supporting our community safety. To the clerk of court's office, while short-staffed, for assisting us in the huge undertaking of legal bond and other information handling and setting us on the path for e-file reporting. To Corporation Counsel Office, Heather Amos specifically, who jumped in to assist with researched, legally defensible policy and procedure writing and advice along the way. And so many others that often do not receive accolades, especially Lori in the Sheriff's Office administration for months of toiling to separate the massive amounts of data, contract billing, and funding from the Sheriff's Office over to Justice Services. To everyone in IT for setting up entire new security points. We have alarm systems now down in our DRC/JSC now. Setting up new security points and too many staff workstations and other equipment to mention. To our facility staff for also setting up too many workstations and equipment to mention. We have all new staff now. Finally, and there are countless unmentioned others, to Janet Smith, who has trained and educated and kept the new Justice Services Director on point and moving ever forward with never a foul word, of course. I'm quite sincere about that. I haven't been able to do much without Janet. Justice Support Services was developed as a separate department for supportive programs to occur, supporting all stakeholders across our system, especially those who are involved in the legal process. It doesn't serve the interest of a single entity and cannot exist without collaboration. I am extremely proud of the work accomplished in just a short period of time. 2022 presents with a whole new pretrial services program for our county, inside of a whole new support center where positive initiatives and programs of the future will surely come about with continued collaboration. I hope you bared with me a little bit with that. And then I just listed the core functions of a pretrial services program. You should know that everything within that is taken from national standards. So one of the core functions is to conduct data-driven, evidence-based pretrial risk assessments to inform the judicial officers with appropriate pretrial release options based upon risk of failure to appear and community safety, to provide community monitoring based on risk and effective use of evidence-based practices for their bonds, reasonably assure defendants return to court by providing consistent monitoring and individual case management strategies aimed at public safety, and to promote and implement supportive interventions that further reduce the likelihood of future criminal behavior. That is the group that's been forming. Shelby Hilden has really been essential to all of that, brought over from the Sheriff's Department. I appreciate that. We have a full-time case manager in Allie Bolstad. She has sat down with countless folks that have come out of the jail and come down from their bond hearings or what have you, sat down with folks and basically read their bond agreement and what they're required to do. A lot of our folks can't even get through them. They can't read them or understand. They may say in court that they do, but oftentimes they don't. She's also sat for hours with some folks that have no Medicaid card and to try and get them to supportive services in the community if they come up on the TCU drug screen or if their charges in history have drugs and alcohol issues or that kind of thing. Tina Sitz continues to perform all the COMPASS risk assessments for the DA's office, and those have actually increased quite significantly. And she also, as part of her position, is a case manager. She takes on a lower case level than, obviously, Allie. That is the bulk of our staff, and then we have an ARPA-funded person also starting in, I want to say 2 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I can't keep track of all the comings and goings, but Shelby did initiate that process for hiring. So beyond that, we also have a separate unit of pretrial services program, and it's something that I've always wanted to focus in on, and that's a separate lab technician kind of service where that's all they do is they support the specimen collections on a daily basis. So and that person comes 2 shifts right now. So that is a summation of essentially what I'm thinking. This is something that was put together last night. These are some stats of the Justice Support Center and the Pretrial Services Program of December. Again, Shelby only just was able to do that last evening. So it's not a complete and utter picture of the overall levels. It does give you a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with. You can see in and I hope I made enough copies. You can see in the packet that Shelby did highlight some areas. I don't know how you'd like to go through this, but basically the lab, as far as numbers, if you want us to just flip back or if you want to review it, but the back page kind of breaks down everything. The average specimen collected daily is 19. That is treatment court diversion and pretrial. The number of in-person pretrial contacts was 445 in the month of December. The number of phone contacts by voice, voicemail, or text messages is 418 for the month of December. Then Shelby broke it down, and I want you to know that we will get better, Supervisor, at producing a picture for you as far as our statistics as we further get better at our reporting system. It does lay out exactly the numbers of verbal warnings, the in-house violation responses, the judicial violation reporting. We are in the process of solidifying, especially in the Criminal Justice Subcommittee, how we report information to not only the DA's office, but to the defense and to the judiciary. We will be e-filing those reports so that everybody gets that information consistently. If you want to scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the total number of non-compliance events. There were warnings in all types of violation reports. There were 64 in the month of December. The total number of violation reports to judicial and law enforcement that had law enforcement contact was 51. The total number of bail jumping charges filed were 3. And this, I would like to point out that Shelby also pointed out. It shows how we handle low-level non-compliance without it rising to the level of bail jumping charges. So we are making that attempt. The other thing that Shelby wanted to show folks is that while we're seeing, especially in December, I mean, December has just been crazy, but while we're seeing an uptick in positive testing specimens, we're seeing also an increase of people reporting in. So they're getting that we're not going to immediately be sending them up for violation. We're going to try and address these situations with them and get them to supportive services. Obviously, GPS and SCRAM are different levels of that. But people are understanding now that it is they need to come in, they need to be compliant, they need to fulfill that. But we're trying to address it in a different way, and we're working through those responses in the Criminal Justice Subcommittee. In the coming months, you will have a well laid out, we're flat out, we're moving toward the PSA, the Public Safety Assessment. It's been a long time discussion with our CJCC, long time commitment of Judge Needham and Mike O'Keefe to move toward that. And how we work with folks within that assessment will also be forming over the next couple of months. So I hope to have more information and have it more clarified on a single document, but this is where we got to this month. So,
If I could jump in real quickly, thank you, Susan, for that very comprehensive report. That was reflects an awful lot of effort over the last 6 months as the new office has gotten up and running, and so at least, so from the committee, we certainly want to extend our appreciation to you and your staff for all their hard work over that period of time and to put your statement together and the beginnings of the statistical report, because we know that'll get updated and changed and modified over time, and we'll certainly, I'll try to solicit the views of the committee on any other pieces of data they'd like to hear about, but we'll have to digest this first,
yep,
probably.
I appreciate that.
Secondly, congratulations on the TAD grant. I'm glad we got that. That's I know a lot of people worked a long time on that, and including yourself, obviously, and I think Judge Waterman probably mostly from the judiciary, or maybe I should give Judge Needham credit, I'm not sure. But
Well, I would like to give credit to Lisa Maltoff
And Lisa.
Kim Kitzberger.
And Kim. And speaking
Really.
of Kim, you mentioned she'd left the treatment court, but we kept her, though, right?
We
So-
did indeed.
So where did Kim go?
I cannot tell you what her position is specifically, but she is over, she wanted to work on substance abuse counseling again. She was at one time, I believe, a substance abuse counselor, and she wanted to move forward with that in her life. She's considering getting her bachelor's degree fulfilled and wants that in her
So
in
she'll
her
still
future.
be working with you and the treatment court
So
in the
some
future?
way, shape, or form, we're still going to be working with them.
Absolutely.
So, and we're going to be working with behavioral health, period. I mean, so that's just where we're moving toward as a county, as a commitment.
Other questions, observations from the committee members?
And I will have this where Janet can put it up on the screen next time. And it'll be
And-
pretty.
And
Thank you, Janet.
I think we can do this, Mr. Administrator, if we can ask if there's any comments from the sheriff or the judges or the district attorney on anything that Susan has said on those topics. I think we've stayed within our announced topics for the meeting. Can I call on anybody for comment? Or anybody have any observations? If not, we'll move on. Okay. So, request for future agenda items. I think, Susan, this was an excellent report, and I know we'll be talking about this at the Criminal Justice Subcommittee and the CJCC, and I'm sure we'll come back with lots of additional things and look forward to those reports on a timely
I'll
basis.
add one thing to it.
Yep.
Judge Black, when I showed him a little bit of information yesterday in his black robe, gave me a high five. So he's very excited to have a pretrial program in this county, and actually exclaimed that we have the opportunity to be the view of everybody around us. And, when we've been forming this, we've also been looking to Eau Claire and all these other counties across our state and looking at what they've been successful with and maybe some things not so successful. So that's the good news. So.
If I could clarify your request for future agenda item that you had mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you want the development of a program, but could you give me a title of that program or something, some parameters, so that we can make sure the right staff are working on that for you, so we can have something on next month's agenda.
Well, I think the thought came from what Patty was saying, that
Yep.
we want to give a little extra visibility this coming year to suicide prevention education. And so it would be the folks who would be engaged in that, picking up on the program that was very successful a couple of years back, deciding what the resources are that we'd have to utilize, any costs involved, that sort of thing. And then we can bring that to the committee's attention maybe in February. Maybe, I hope that's not too soon to just have an outline of it, and for whatever input we would have or approval we would need, we could try to work with you on that, or any amendments suggest amendments to the budget. I don't think this should be terribly expensive, and as you say, we have some potential monies coming in that could be utilized on this. Is that sufficient? And then we can work over the course of the coming month with everybody to hone in on that if we need to any further. But yeah, medical examiner.
The biggest thing, last time we got a lot of support with the hospital foundations. That's reigniting those relationships with the hospital foundations. They took on a lot of that cost. So that was, the presidents of the different foundations and Rotary and all that there is really starting where the majority of that funding comes from.
Call on Janet. Any announcements, correspondence that we need to speak about? Okay. Okay, Supervisor Hanson.
And this, I'm going to put on something I've never done in this committee, is to say something as a chair of a different committee. But on January 11th at 4 o'clock, there's going to be a public meeting in this room, which will be regarding the development of the new park, which is Eckert Bluffland along Old 35, very close to Hudson. And it'll be an opportunity for people to come and tell us, the county, the Community Development Department, what they think of the development of the new park. And as public protection professionals, it'd be a great opportunity to just walk in, make a couple of notes, because in the future, it would be a great opportunity to avoid that saying, why didn't somebody think of that? It would be a great opportunity for somebody, if you see a red flag, you could actually write it down. It would be nice to have a driveway here or some safety concern pop up, because it'd be nice to have public protection professionals take a peek at it. So I'd encourage folks to come in, take a peek at it. It's on January 11th at 4 o'clock in this room. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Judge Needham.
And I'm not sure this is an announcement, but Janet and I have been talking. I think you recognize it. Generally, each month I have a report. I'm probably the most technologically challenged person in the room. And for whatever reasons, Janet and I cannot communicate by email. She tries, she gets blocked, it gets booted out. So we're going to try to reach out to the state to see if it's on our end or if it's on the county's end. But what I'm going to ask leave of the chair is just to have a set agenda item for court report. There may be months I have nothing, but there are months where hopefully I may have something to provide. So rather than Janet and I battling about she going to my judicial assistant who then goes through somebody else, if I can just have a set spot on the agenda, I would appreciate that.
I think the answer is absolutely yes.
I thought, Your Honor, you were going to mention Warrant Day.
Oh, yes.
Well, I can mention Warrant Day. I can't remember what the clerk of courts reported, but we have thousands of outstanding warrants in this county. And so through the creativity of the district attorney, CJCC, Judge Nordstrand primarily is leading the charge. We're imitating what Douglas County did a couple of years ago, and that's to have a warrant day where people with outstanding misdemeanor warrants can come in on January 21st and try to resolve those cases. They won't be arrested. It's simply an opportunity to come in, and if we can process the case that day, we're going to process the case that day. If it's for outstanding fines or costs that they've been warranted on, we'll set them up with a payment plan. But we're just trying to provide a venue for people with warrants to come in rather than getting stopped for a traffic violation only to find out they have this warrant in St. Croix County, and that is time for the sheriff, it's time for the jail. Sometimes they're in counties miles and miles away. They get arrested, they're brought back here. So we're doing it through Facebook. I think the sheriff had a post on Facebook. Adam had a post on the county's website. So we're trying to advertise it as best we can for people to come in and have their warrants at least quashed. If we can't resolve the case that day, at least we'll get it on the calendar. We'll see how successful it is. We're not dealing with felony warrants. That's a whole nother level of security and risk, but at least misdemeanor criminal traffic, we're going to try to clean up as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. And as you said, this is the consummation of about 2 years of efforts. I know it started under Judge Nordstrom when he chaired the criminal committee of the CJCC, and I attend all those meetings, and I can assure you that with all the input from the judges, the sheriff, the clerk of court, the district attorney, just everybody, the public defenders, everybody you can conceive of has had input to this issue. It has not been an easy one to resolve how to do it or when to do it or what the scope of it should be, but they did thoughtfully resolve this over many, many discussions. And so again, congratulations, Judge, that this is happening. Supervisor Hanson.
I think it's really exciting, and I commend you and Judge Nordstrand and District Attorney. I think after, it's just a suggestion, but after the thing is done, to celebrate it in public media and make a statement to let people know it's nothing to be afraid of, so that when you do it again, people are likely to come back.
We'll certainly report out at this committee as to the success, but I think hopefully this will become a regularly occurring event. Just as I said, it saves time, energy, and expense on so many levels if we can get people to voluntarily come in and take care of these obligations for which they've been warranted. So.
The last item on the agenda is our date of our next meeting. It's scheduled for February 3rd. I have to say that I am anticipating I am going to have an issue that day. And so as we get closer to that date, if I have an issue, I'll try to bring it to everybody's attention. But I think there's two options. One, I can Zoom into the meeting, I hope, and perhaps Kathy could chair the meeting. If she were here, I'd just soon not chair it through Zoom, so I'd soon Kathy would chair it. Or if it's more convenient to the members of the committee to do it, we could do it on a week later. And I would try to work that out with the clerk of court. I'm not sure we can, but we could try to. So those are the two options, but I don't think, right as of now, I'd say we can schedule it for the 3rd. I may be here, but those are a couple of options that you might get emails from me regarding if that's satisfactory. Are there any other comments before we adjourn? Hearing none, committee is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.